Mr. President, I'm here today to talk to you about your trip to Asia, and in particular, I want to urge you to assure our allies in the region, our long-standing allies in the region, that the United States has both the ability and the willingness to maintain an enduring presence in this linchpin of the world economy. Of course, as you know, it accounts for roughly 50% of world trade, 60% of the world economy. Despite America's inconsistent commitment to the Asia-Pacific region over the past 2 decades, its evolution has continued apace, largely driven by 2 phenomena. One, of course, is the dragon in the room, China. And China's resurgence has played a significant role in transforming the region, in just part because of its size. But the evolution of the Asia-Pacific, Mr. President, is not simply a Sino-centric phenomenon. It extends well beyond China. Think about our abandonment of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Many of the other countries who are negotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership are agitating to press forward on that agreement even without our participation. So objective number 1, Mr. President, renew your commitment to crafting region-wide economic rules of the road. And this is an imperative that is taken on heightened urgency not only because of the collapse of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but also because, as I mentioned earlier, because of the growing momentum of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. And what I would recommend is that at your speech on November 10th, you commit the United States to reinvigorating discussions on the free trade area of the Asia-Pacific. Imperative number 2, Mr. President, demonstrate a cohesive message about American policy towards the Asia-Pacific. In previous months, you've taken a more transactional approach, a more bilateral approach to Asia-Pacific diplomacy, while some of your top administration officials have hewed to a more traditional line. They've spoken about multilateral diplomacy, upholding a rules-based order in the Asia-Pacific, strengthening intra-regional security arrangements between our allies, and so that incongruity between the message that you seem to be sending and the messages of your top administration officials, it sends conflicting signals. And the longer that those incongruities persist, the more our allies will begin to question whether or not we actually do have a clear policy towards the Asia-Pacific. So use your meetings, your speeches, to close that gap between your messaging and that of your top administration officials. Recommendation number 3, use that meeting with President Xi to express interest, U.S. interest in joining the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, and also to express interest in shaping the norms and the rules of the Belt and Road Initiative. China, as I said earlier, China is the giant of the region. It's the economic giant of the region. And how America is able to sustain its competitiveness, its economic competitiveness in particular, will be a major signal to the rest of the region about America's staying power. By trying to reject Chinese initiatives out of hand, it actually signals a lack of resolve, and it signals a lack of confidence in our own economic resilience. And that brings me to my 4th and final recommendation, Mr. President, pursuing a free trade agreement with Japan. Now, you've properly expressed reservations about our trade deficit with Japan and about some of the imbalances in our bilateral economic relationships in the Asia-Pacific. However, Japan has historically been and will continue to be our most significant ally in the Asia-Pacific, and it's a bellwether for the rest of the region. If Japan concludes that it's in the Japanese national interest to sign a free trade agreement with the United States, South Korea is likely to follow suit, Australia is likely to follow suit, so you have a very solid foundation on which to build. Address your concerns with Prime Minister Abe about the imbalance and about the trade deficit, but I think that this is a very promising area for you. And if you're able to impart momentum to negotiations on a free trade agreement with Japan, I think that that'll send a very positive signal to the rest of the region, and it will strengthen our economic footprint in the region for decades to come. And so, Mr. President, this is a great opportunity for you. It's an opening salvo. You'll be traveling to Asia on many more occasions, but first impressions matter. And I would say that this trip that you're taking to Asia, your speeches, the meetings you're having one-on-one, these represent one of a very rapidly shrinking set of opportunities that the United States has to assure its allies that the United States is here to stay, it's not going to be on the sidelines, and that it will make a decisive commitment to strengthen its economic footprint. And now, Mr. President, it's up to you.